On this week's show, the Georgia Southern Eagles looking to rebound from their loss to Lafayette as they get ready to take on Georgia State. And the Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball teams open up the season at home. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. Mike, Georgia Southern, it seems like the past few weeks we keep saying, well, they can still get bowl eligible. Well, they can still get bowl eligible. Well, this is the last week we're going to be able to say that.
They can still get bowl eligible.
Because if they lose, they will not be bowl eligible. If they win, they will still have a chance to be bowl eligible. Playing Georgia State on the road, but before we get to that, let's review this past week. Lafayette at home, Thursday night, in front of a national audience once again on ESPN, and thankfully there was a national audience because there wasn't much of an audience at Paulson, unfortunately, and by the fourth quarter that audience had gotten down to very sparse, to say the least. Your thoughts on the Lafayette game where Georgia Southern ended up losing by 7?
Well, another one where Georgia Southern just didn't execute very well in any of the phases of the game, really, aside from possibly special teams, really keeping them in it there in the fourth quarter with a big block punt and return, and they needed every bit of that because the offense, once again, just not getting the job done for the Eagles, sputtering once again. Almost nothing of this rushing game. It's the same guys, apparently the same concepts, but when you're rushing for less than 2 yards per carry with that backfield, something's just terribly wrong with the offense.
And defensively, sometimes you can go to them and say, hey guys, we need you to help us out for a while. The defense, especially there right before the end of the first half, we mentioned it, you get some momentum, you score a touchdown, and then boom, 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 in just over a minute, Lafayette's gone almost 95 yards and scores a touchdown and takes any momentum you had right out of it.
Right, it looked like Georgia Southern might have been turning a corner there, getting the crowd, or what there was of the crowd, on their side a bit. They even pinned back the Raging Cajuns inside their own 10-yard line, but then, as you mentioned, I believe it was 6 plays, 92 yards, just deep pass, quarterback running, no one accounts for him, and he gets a big pickup on the ground, and those are the things that, when the defense has let Georgia Southern down this year, it always seems to be in a spot where they can't afford to have them do it. They've had some good games, they've made some great plays, but whenever they need that stop this year, it's just not there for Georgia Southern.
All right, so we turn our attention to this week, and you've got Georgia State coming up. 2 years ago, Georgia Southern went to Georgia State and played them for the first time and blew them out. Had probably more fans there than they did at the Georgia Dome. Last year, it's pretty obvious that the opposite happened. Georgia State comes in here. There's some rumblings about whether Willie Fritz is going or what, and they come in and lay the smack down to Georgia Southern. This time around, going up there, Vegas has this as about a 3-point game, so most people are thinking it's going to be pretty close. They just fired head coach Trent Miles. Your thoughts on taking on Georgia State this week?
I'm really fresh out of predictions. Neither of these teams has anything consistent enough for you to really look at and know what to expect in this game. Georgia State, they've had 1 or 2 flashes earlier in the year where they looked like that bowl team of last year, taking Wisconsin well into the fourth quarter at Camp Randall Stadium. That's a top 10 team. But after that, just continuing to regress in many ways like Georgia Southern this year. The things that they thought they could count on, a good defense, it hasn't been as good as Georgia State thought it would be. It's been left out on the field entirely too much by a passing game that hasn't come around without quarterback Nick Arbuckle there from last year. No answers for the Panthers at quarterback. And you could say that there are a lot of parallels with them and Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern trying to run the ball, but again, when you can't do it, when you can't move the chains, you leave your defense out there for way too long of an amount of time. They get tired, they give up points. So I can't expect either of these offenses to show much more than what they had the last month or two. What it might come down to, I guess, is special teams, and Georgia Southern's got the edge there. The one thing that they do have is a great field goal kicker in Younghoe Koo, some decent return guys. Georgia State, on the other hand, special teams has been a disaster, so it might not be the prettiest game, but hopefully it'll come down to kicks.
Yeah, well, the last couple weeks, Georgia State's defense has not done what they did the prior 8 weeks, I guess. which was to keep them in some games. The last two has been a little lopsided, and I guess that might have been one of the reasons why they ended up making a change over there. We did have a chance to talk with head coach Tyson Summers and some of the players about this weekend's matchup at Georgia State.
Oh, it's tough, obviously, for us seniors. We only have 2 more games as Georgia Southern Eagle, and it's tough what we're going through right now in the season. But it is what it is, and I'm just, we're all still thankful that we just have an opportunity to play football here, and the type of people that are surrounded by this program. That's what we were thankful for, and we just have to take care of business these next 2 games and try to make it to the bowl game. Last year, they played really well against us, and we played poorly, and they beat us here in Paulson, and that's something that to be honest with you, that's been on my mind since the season ended last year. So, I know what they're going through. That's the same thing we went through last year. Losing our head coach, Coach Fritz, and I understand what those players are going through, and I know they're going to be ready to play against us this Saturday. And we just have to have a great week of practice and get our preparation done the right way, so we'll be ready for Saturday.
We feel good every week. We never go into the game doubting ourselves. So we feel good as long as we come out here have a good week of preparation. Going to the game, we expect to win.
They throw it well, and they have good backs. They have good backs, and you see those guys have explosive runs through it. But like you said, they've got a quarterback that is accurate with what he's sitting there trying to do, and gets the ball out of his hands. Doesn't give you a whole lot of opportunities for just a ton of pressure. But we've got to make sure that, again, it goes back to what we've talked about all year. We've got to do a better job of it, which is keep quarterbacks from never getting comfortable, from being able to set their feet, from being able to sit there and feel like they can step into every throw. And we've got to do a better job of being able to one, put a plan together, and 2, be able to execute how we can get some pressure on the quarterbacks. Really tough with Coach Miles, particularly after last year and being able to take Georgia State to their first bowl game last year and finishing up the season that they did. And, you got to prepare for what they do. And I certainly don't think that there will be drastic changes this late in the season with an offense. Maybe some wrinkles here or there, maybe a change here or there. Offensively, I don't anticipate there being very much different from a defensive standpoint or a special team standpoint, but there certainly may be, and we've got to be prepared for those things. We've tried to go through, by now we're usually not to a point where we've been through every game throughout the season. We've tried to go ahead and get ahead and be on top of that, particularly for what you just said and the reason that we've done it. So we're trying to make sure that we get all those things covered. And again, having played on a Thursday night 2 of the last 3 weeks, this may feel like a really long week for us, and may have a little bit more opportunity than we're kind of used to all of a sudden to be able to prepare.
The busiest travel days of the year will soon be here. What better way to arrive at Grandma's house, or any house, than in a beautiful new vehicle from Franklin Chevrolet in Statesboro. The new models are a feast for the eyes and as comfortable as mashed potatoes and apple pie. And comfortable is the way you feel each and every time you visit our dealership. Come in and take advantage of special holiday savings at Franklin Chevy. You'll drive home satisfied.
Well, Mike, this is the time of the show where we typically give our predictions of the scores. We'll begin with you. Nothing would surprise me at this point. I thought the Lafayette game last week would be a low-scoring game. It ends up one of the higher total scores for Georgia Southern. This week you've got Georgia State. I would again think this would be a low-scoring game. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a lot of playmakers all around the field, but for both teams, they've just had trouble getting it to those guys. This season for Georgia Southern, it's been getting guys like Matt Breida, Wesley Fields, whatever quarterbacks in the game, getting them some space to run the ball. For Georgia State, it's been that they have some of the best receivers in the conference, but nobody to throw it to them. They throw it to other teams as much as they throw it to their star receivers. So yeah, I can see a situation where something similar to the UL Lafayette game happens, where both teams crack a couple of big plays, the score runs up, but I think I have to stick with my gut, go with what both teams have shown us throughout the year, and that's that they can't put drives together. They don't put up big points. They aren't going to find that many big plays. So I think they find the end zone a few times between the two of them. I like Georgia Southern to hold on, get some measure of revenge for last year, keep their bowl hopes eligible for or bowl eligibility hopes alive for one more week. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but I'll take Georgia Southern 20-14.
I'm going 17-13 as a final with Georgia Southern coming out on top. All right, basketball going on around Bullitt County as well. We got the men and the women, and they both played at home now. The guys, tough loss to NC State to open the season, but come back and win a game that they should have won. The women have won 2 that they should have won. Briefly, give us how you feel like the women and men will look right now.
Oh, I think there's a lot to be looking forward to, a lot to be excited about for both these teams. For the Georgia Southern ladies, their first 2-0 start in over a decade. As you mentioned, 2 very winnable games, but still winning them hasn't been the easiest thing over the last couple of years. I think that Coach Kip Drown, now in his second year, implementing his system, a few more of his players in there, some older players really buying into it. I think that they're going to hit the ground running, maybe build up some momentum. They're going to need it going into the Sun Belt. The good news is they'll qualify for the tournament no matter what this year with the new tournament layout. I don't think that's going to be necessary, though. I believe I said it last week. This is a team that's good enough to finish, maybe not in the top half of the conference, but definitely win some games, press some of the better teams to their limit, maybe defend their home court and get a higher seed, possibly a winnable game in the tournament. When you look at the guys, even bigger expectations for them. You mentioned the loss to begin the season, but that's against an NC State team that's picked to finish in the top half of the ACC, which I think is unquestionably the best conference in the country, a top 5 or top 6 team in the ACC, usually on the verge of a top 25 ranking. And Georgia Southern, the biggest thing about that game, they didn't stay in the game because they were hot shooting. They didn't stay in the game because NC State couldn't make a shot. They just played NC State tough for 40 minutes. They were there at the end, couldn't quite get the win, but very encouraging to see them go toe-to-toe with a team like that. And then at home, getting to show what they can do, maybe some fireworks we can expect to see throughout the season, going up against Coastal Georgia and really just outclassing them.
All right, yeah, the Coastal Georgia game. Let's get out and take a look at some of the highlights. An exciting new entrance for the Georgia Southern Eagle basketball team as the men's team in their home opener as they host Coastal Georgia from Brunswick. This one was all Eagles. Ike Smith starts things out with the jumper. Next, Smith, the backdoor cut as he slams in 2 more of his game-high 23. Monte Glenn with 9 points and 6 rebounds. Here, the putback for 2. Devontae Boykin would chip in with 7 points and a couple steals. Here he goes in for the layup. And next, Boykin dials it up from the corner for 3. The Eagles with 9 from behind the arc. Back inside we go. Boykin penetrates for the lefty lay-in. Eagles by 11. Smith later going up strong with the left hand as well. A slow night for Tukey Brown. Here he comes up with the pull-up jumper. He'd finish with 8 points on the evening. The only other player in double figures was B.J. Gladden, first for 3. He'd have 15 points in the game. And finally, Gladden coming through with the finishing touch on the two-handed slam. Eagles cruise 92-43. All right, well, that'll wrap things up for now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again soon.